Hi, I'm Kinkas and I'm a synth DIY guy. Welcome to today's video, which is yet another installment on my series of videos about the Erica X .edu system designed by X Klein in conjunction with Erica Synths. If you haven't seen any of the previous installments, please check them out. It's a really cool, complete synthesizer where the focus is in learning electronics. So each of the module kits includes a very in-depth manual with complete descriptions of each circuit, explanations of the basic principles behind how each of these work, and I highly recommend you check out the manual, do the breadboard experiments. But in this video we're actually going to check out the wavefolder module in action. We'll see it working, we'll hear what it sounds like, we'll explore some ideas about patching with it, then we'll look at how to build it and how to calibrate it. So without further ado, let's get started. The first thing I want to do is just show the basic operation. As you can see, it has two inputs. It has one main input, which just goes into the folder itself. So that would be useful for a triangle wave or a sine wave, for example. Or you can experiment with any kind of signal. However, this system doesn't have a native triangle wave, for example. So the fold module actually has a saw to triangle wave converter right here. So first let's plug the saw wave in there, and then as you turn the intensity knob up, that triangle wave will get folded. So I'm going to plug the output into oscilloscope over here, and as you can see, there's the triangle wave right there. Let's listen to it, let's hear what it sounds like. Plug the output of that oscilloscope channel right into my output mixer over here. Alright, let's turn down my darkness reverb pedal for now, and we're just gonna turn up that intensity knob, and here, actually here it's right at the beginning, you get even cleaner triangle wave sound, right? Fewer harmonics. But then as you go beyond it, you can see how it folds the wave on my scope screen, but you can see it and you can hear it, right? And the folded wave. So this already gives you a whole bunch of possibilities for sound design. So let's explore some of them. First we're going to plug this into a filter, and then from the filter to a VCA right here, and then from the VCA to the output mixer right here. You can turn up the VCA, you can turn up the input on the filter here, and we can use the filter to cut down on some of that harshness that's generated by the folding. See? Open up the filter. Now I'm going to do one trick, which is to track the filter with the volt per octave output, same as the oscillator. That way, as we move up in frequency, the filter will also open up, and we have a more consistent timbre throughout the whole range. Cool. Now let's connect the gate output of my FH2 here. We'll connect that to an envelope generator, just so we can get that VCA to open only when we play a key. Now we turn that offset down. Now I'll turn up a little bit of the reverb. just change the range here on my FH2 so we can get lower frequencies. Cool. So already, as you can see, you can get some really interesting sounds way beyond what we were originally getting with just filtering pulse and saw waves. Now you might wonder, but Kinkas, there is no CV input on this folder. How do we control it with CV? Well, that's a very good question, and I do have an answer for you. In this very system, we have a second auxiliary VCA. It's a dual VCA. So what we can do in order to create voltage control of the wavefolding is use the auxiliary VCA to control the input level of our saw wave into the folder. So let's have a look at how that's done. So first I'm unplugging the saw wave from the input. Now I'm going to plug the saw wave into our VCA2 input. Now I'll get that output of the VCA back into the input of the folder, right? What we can do is turn the intensity all the way up on the folder, and then as we turn the volume down on the input, but we'll have to do that by using some kind of controller. Why don't we get an output from my joystick right here, y-axis output, and we'll plug that into the input of the VCA. So now let's offset this y a little bit. So now with the joystick all the way down, we get that triangle wave, and as I bring it up, we get more of the folded wave, right? That basically is a way to, without even using anything external to the system, to add voltage control over the folding parameter of our EDU wave folder. Why don't we use something different, maybe an LFO? We can use the second envelope here in loop as a kind of LFO, right? Now what we can do is use the offset of the VCA here to control center that LFO. We can make the LFO slower too by changing the attack and decay time. Leave sustain down. Very cool. So now we've animated the wave folding. And really I'm not using anything external to the system except for the MIDI to CV converter. Here I'm using the FH2 just to get CV out of this little keyboard here. Just change the pitch bend range here as well. There we go. Let's get a little more of that reverb goodness in there. Very cool. Very cool. Let's make that LFO faster. Very nice. Open the filter up a little bit. Remember, the filter is tracking volt per octave as well, which is why notes don't die out when we play higher pitches. And we still get that timbral shift from the wavefolder. Very cool, right? Another thing we can do is use a different envelope generator. Use the Contour 1 as an envelope generator here on my rack, and we'll trigger it with the same gate signal and connect the output to the CV input on our VCA here. Open up the filter. Right. And once I've fixed my envelope generator, I can do this within the system itself without having to use an external envelope. Here, bringing it to audio rate. The filter generates a sinusoidal wave, so why don't we use the filter? Let's undo all this patching here and do some experiments from scratch now. Let's put the filter resonance high, and we'll plug the output of the filter into the input of the folder. And now we're using the regular input, not the saw tri input. And let's plug that straight into the VCA here and manually turn it up. Alright, but I still want to look at it. We'll use the scope. There you go. If I bring the resonance down a bit, you get closer to an actual sine wave. But since the amplitude is lower, we also get less of a folding range. It's still very nice. Alright, let's play with the reverb again a bit and get into some sound design here, using the filter as a sine-like oscillator and the folder to manipulate the harmonic content. That's a really nice drone right there. Why don't we control CV with the keyboard a bit? instead of using keyboard, we use our sequencer. We'll use the gate output to trigger the envelope generator. We'll trigger this envelope generator right here. And use that to control the VCA. Why don't we send a saw wave to frequency modulate the filter now? Let's turn down the reverb here. You can hear these waves a little better. As I turn the folder intensity up, changes it quite a bit. Ooh, listen to that. It sounds super nice. Almost sounds like a spring reverb being struck. Super cool. This reverb is granular, so it's generating some interesting extra sounds there. I just got this at NobCon, this pedal. I'm kind of excited about using it. I hope you don't mind. FMing the filter sounds super cool. You can control the amount too. So this is without any FM. And I can bring it up to taste. Very cool. Now why don't we send the clock out to the clock in of the sample and hold. And now we can get a random sequence out of this. Take the sample and hold output here. We'll use that to control the filter there. And now we can use the sequencer to control the pitch of the oscillator, which is frequency modulating the filter. Very cool. Now I can use the mixer here to mix these two signals. Send that out to just one of these now. Very cool. And now we can use this envelope here as an LFO again and send that to the second CV input here. Now we're using 3 CV sources. So we got this one. It's sort of just sweeping it like a siren. And bring this one up. Get those other sources in there. Super cool. You use the slewed output here. Make that random sequence smoother. Super nice. What a fun little system. Enjoying it a lot. So here's with the folding down. Sounds much cleaner, right? As I bring the folding up, I start getting harsher sound. Very cool. Make it a 4-step sequence. Lots of fun. Using the pulse wave now to FM the filter as an oscillator. So let's stop this for now. Think of something else to do. Now, the envelope generator, if we put it in loop, it should act like a triangle wave oscillator, right? Yeah, it's not exactly a triangle wave. It looks more like a shark fin kind of a thing. We can stick this into the wave folder here and see what it does. Check that out. It does affect our envelope generator as well. So let's listen to that. Plugging it into VCA number 1 here. Very cool. Now the cool thing here is that with this thing we can go way below audible frequencies, right? The folder should still be acting. So now we should get a more interesting modulation wave So why don't we use the filter again as a sound source? So we'll plug that into the VCA here. Alright, and now we're going to modulate the pitch of our filter with this. Listen to that. Now that's a much more interesting LFO shape. Kind of chaotic, right? It sounds like it's laughing. Let's bring the intensity up. Very cool. Right, so as you can see, you can use the wavefolder for modulation sources as well, not just for audio. Right, let's make it super slow here, that envelope. Very cool. If we bring it down, it tames it a bit. Doesn't go quite as high. Still very interesting waveform. Very cool. Let's bring in the sequencer. There's another modulation source here. Use that saw as clock here again to get that sequencer to go into audio rate. Cool. Now if I send the saw wave directly instead of using the sequencer here, modulate that filter. So this is just the VCF responding to the folded envelope LFO. It sounds almost like a chaotic oscillator. And here we can bring in a saw wave oscillator. Why don't we get that sample and hold output into the FM input here. Cool, so now we're randomly modulating the VCO, which is acting as frequency modulation source for the VCF as the oscillator. This sounded super cool. Very cool. Now we can use this other envelope generator. If we take the gate output of the sequencer and trigger this envelope right here, we can use it on the VCA here. You can do something a little more percussive, while also taking advantage of some of these chaotic techniques. Great sounds. Super cool. Very nice. Now there's one more thing I'd like to try, which is to use the folding to affect the slewed output of the sample and hold module. So we'll create a random voltage and then fold that and see how that affects our oscillator, right? So let's just let that oscillate freely for now. We'll pull out some of these cables. All right. So now we'll get the slewed output here and stick it in to the folder. So the slewed output by itself would do this. You can make the slewing a little slower. Very interesting already. But now if I fold it, this is what we get. A more interesting and radical random voltage to control that filter. Cool. Now let's use the regular sample and hold output to modulate the VCO, and we'll send that saw wave to do FM with the filter oscillator. That sounds pretty cool too. Now we can use our gate out again with another envelope generator to control the dual VCA there. And we use the clock out of the sequencer to the clock in of the noise just to synchronize them. And again, we're getting some really interesting R2D2 vibes here, astromech, if you will. Although maybe a little too rhythmic. Very cool. Let's make this a 5-step. And maybe now, remember that first trick about voltage control of the folding via the use of the auxiliary VCA, right? Let's leave it like this for now, right? And right now it's not folding anything, there's nothing in the input, but it's still kind of sending a voltage there. But we'll now take the slewed output into the VCA here, and we'll send that VCA output back into the input of the folder. And now we can send our envelope LFO into the CV input here. And now we've got an even more randomized sample and hold output. Check that out. Let's make this slower here. So even more random. Pretty cool. Let's make this slower. Bring the intensity all the way up. Maybe make this faster now. Cool. And now we can bring up the audio rate FM there. And make it rhythmic again. Bring down the offset of the VCA. Cool. Maybe faster. Isn't that nice? Lovely. What a fun little system to play around with, come up with crazy sounds. So cool. Alright, why don't we have a look at how to build and calibrate the module. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. Okay, so here's the kit. It comes with everything you need, all of the electronic and hardware components, the panel, the PCB. And this time we're going to start with organizing our parts on the bench, and then we're going to plug in the IC socket. Make sure it's oriented correctly. There's a little notch there. And we'll use the snake charmer technique to solder just one pin and then go ahead and solder the remaining pins. Now we'll turn the board around and plug in the diodes. Now the diodes have polarity. Make sure that they're oriented correctly or this thing won't work. See a little line up on that one and left on the second one. Okay, so now let's plug in these little ceramic capacitors. As you can see, the pads are exposed on these, so I'm going to go ahead and solder them from above. I do that whenever I can. It's just easier for me rather than spreading out the legs, turning the board around every time. And the diodes get the same treatment as well. Now, these are the transistors. I made a mistake here. I thought all the transistors were the same value, but they are not. 2 of them are BC558s and 4 are BC548s. Just make sure you plug them in correctly. I had to swap 2 of them later, which wasn't so much fun. But yeah, just keep track of where you're plugging them in so that they're going into where they should go. The pads are really tiny on these, use very little solder, and once you trim the leads, make sure that there are no shorts. You might need to touch up a little bit and remove some excess solder with a desoldering braid if needed. Okay, so now we'll turn the board around again, and we're going to start with the resistors now. All of the resistors on this board are standing up TP style. Just follow the build guide. I like to measure my resistors before I plug them in, and in this case I'm plugging in each value at a time. Right, I measured, plug them in, spread the legs out on the bottom so they won't fall off, turn it around, solder, and then trim the leads, rinse and repeat. So I'm just gonna do that for all of the resistors now. Now you might notice sometimes if it looks easy, I'll solder the exposed pins on these resistors from the top side, and that'll save me having to fold out the legs from the bottom, because it'll keep them in place. I think that's what I'll do with these two. Let's check it out. Yeah, see, I'm soldering that exposed pin, and that way I can just turn it around and they won't fall off. And solder the remaining pins, trim the leads, turn it back around, and yeah, just do that till you're done with all of the resistors. Okay. Trim those leads again, turn it back around, and we'll plug in the little white box capacitors now. These are not polarized. Just make sure to plug them in where they're supposed to go. Now the electrolytic capacitors are indeed polarized. The little line indicates negative and the longer leg indicates positive. And on the PCB, the square hole, the square pad indicates positive. Now we'll plug in the trim pot for calibration. Spread out the little legs on the bottom so it doesn't fall out, and solder all of these up. And trim the leads. All the while, when you're trimming the leads, you're also checking to make sure there are no shorts or cold solder joints. Touch up, clean up as needed. Let's plug in that IC socket. Now you'll notice that one of the little legs got squished. See, didn't quite go into the socket. So we're gonna have to fix that. Pull the IC back out. And I used a combination of my fingernail, the screwdriver, and eventually a pair of needle nose tweezers to gently and carefully adjust that little leg, because once it's folded once, it's fragile. But now here it goes, plugged in perfectly, no issues. Now let's move on to the power socket. Make sure that the notch is facing towards the inside of the PCB. Use the snake charmer technique again for the first pin and then all the others. And now we're going to move on to the panel components. Here's the one tall trimmer or potentiometer and the 3 jacks. Now we can slip the panel on and finger tighten some of the nuts to keep the assembly together for when we turn it around to solder. And that's all that we need to solder now is the pot and the 3 jacks. All done. If you didn't make any mistakes like I did with those transistors, then you're ready to calibrate this thing. So let's calibrate this wavefolder. I've plugged in a saw wave into the saw wave input, and I have the intensity all the way down, which means we should be getting a triangle, right? As I turn the intensity up, it folds, right? Let's turn up the volume here so we can actually hear what we're doing. Right, and then again, this is what folding it will sound like. But for now, we just want to fix that triangle wave. As you can see, there's a little discrepancy here, like a little peak, right? So if I grab the trim pot here, start to turn it, you can see not only does that little peak go away, but the sound also gets rounder with fewer harmonics. If you go too far the other way, That's what happens, see? We're hearing more harmonics again, and we're also seeing an imperfect triangle. Let's just find that perfect middle spot. Looks and sounds like that's it. Okay, so once you've fixed the triangle wave, that's the only thing needed for the calibration. Very cool.